fresh water is a commodity that's very easy to take for granted. But for activists and scientists in the southern tier, that myth is not easily dispelled. The battle over New York State's fracking ban may be over, but the trench lines dug during those days are still in existence. Now faced with new threats like agricultural runoff and harmful algae blooms, members of the Community Science Initiative have moved to the front lines. Correspondent Amanda Chin has that story.
There's potential contamination from the salt mining operations.
Right.
We don't want a saltwater lake. As much as I enjoy saltwater fishing, it wouldn't be the same here.
John Wertis is one of several volunteers at the Community Science Institute who collects water samples at tributaries around Cayuga Lake. The environmental nonprofit started in 2000, and since the beginning, it's harnessed the power of volunteers throughout the community. Wertis, who's been doing this for 11 years, took me along for the testing. First, I met him at his house so he could show me where we were going.
And today, we are just a small piece of that puzzle. Today, we're going to be looking at some sites out on Trumansburg Creek watershed.
After arriving at the site, he fills out a tracking sheet. The tracking sheet is vital because CSI is a certified lab where they are held to very high quality control standards.
Green when it's really fast flowing and full of, like in the spring, it can be a dark green. Velocity, depth with some basic things based on where I'm sampling. And we sample from the same spot every time, so or at least within a 50-foot range, but the same general location.
Before the water is put into the bottles, Wertis records the temperature of the water.
So we're at 18 degrees Celsius.
18 degrees Celsius.
18 degrees Celsius.
How many seconds do you usually keep it in? A minute?
Until it stops moving.
Until it stops moving. We then go and collect the water samples using 2 different bottles.
And this basically is pretty simple. We want to be downstream so that we don't contaminate our sample. We want to look for as deep and flowing water.
After collecting from all 3 sites, Wertis goes to another volunteer's house. He drops off the samples so they can be placed in a cooler, which are then brought to the lab, where Claire Weston, the outreach coordinator, logs in each sample. The samples are then ready to be tested. Noah Mark, a laboratory analyst, tests the bacteria of the water samples using a filtration apparatus.
There's a paper filter on there that catches all the bacteria, and then you move that paper filter onto these plates which have media, and it's selective enough to grow for those 2 types of bacteria that I mentioned, coliform and E. coli.
After 24 hours, the paper filters with the bacteria will be ready. Meanwhile, Michi Schulenberg tests the samples for chemicals.
So this was a bottle that was taking the sample out of the stream, and I took a subsample of it after carefully shaking it, and this is going to be acidified to preserve it for some of our assays that we can do up to a month.
What are the results after all of the lab testing is done? The 2 sites on Trumansburg Creek are considered safe for recreation purposes. On Boardman Creek, however, the E. coli levels were abnormally high this time around. What do they do with these results? Weston says that the results are entered into their online database for reference.
And it lives there. For the most part, it's 100% public, so anybody can look at it. It has these great maps and charts and graphs that really can show you what's going on over time.
CSI also uses these results to inform the community about water quality.
Last December, we gave a presentation on increasing chloride levels in many of the creeks in the area.
Steve Penningroth, the executive director of CSI, says their data was used around 10 years ago when CSI found fecal coliform bacteria on the pipe of the Trumansburg wastewater treatment plant.
Finally, they realized it, and they, a couple of years ago, upgraded their plant to the tune of $6.1 million, and they got an interest-free loan, 30 years, from the DEC.
It all circles back to the volunteers. Without them, the community would not know if harmful toxins and pollutants are in Cayuga Lake. Would there be adequate drinking or bathing water? Would people get sick? If people like John Wertis weren't around, all of that would be a mystery. However, for John, the answer to why he is still doing this is simple.
At the time when we first started, my daughter was, I think, 3 years old, 4 years old, 4 years old. And I was thinking a lot more about the future than I was when I was in my 20s and 30s. And so, yeah.
So you want her to have a place to come just like you had a place to come when you were younger?
I think you sort of pass the buck along to the next generation, or the next generation, especially when one has a family. One starts, again, thinking about the future.